Okay, so right now we are going to unpack and we're going to take a look at the 2019 O-level paper. All right, and again, every time as you are doing the O-level paper, what is important is definitely when you are looking at the questions, okay? That first 10 or even 10 to 15 minutes of unpacking the skills required in the source-based question, or it could be the source itself, and even specifically the SRQ. Do take your time spent to look at the questions so that you are prepared. Okay, so now let's take a look at again, because this was in 2019, it was worded as A, B, C, D, E. Of course, we all know that it has changed since then. We are looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right, so let's take a look at the first question. We are looking at why do you think this poster was produced? So it is a why question. Now, with every why question, what is most important is definitely again, you are looking at the message statement. You are also looking at the audience, but specifically you are looking at the bigger context. I think this is very, very important. Okay, you are looking at the context. That means with reference to background information, with reference to even other sources, specifically, why was this poster produced? Now, sometimes they would give you in the O-level, remember, a year, they would give you a timeline. So be very careful, okay, when you are reading and you are unpacking the provenance. Okay, now for question 2, it is a compare contrast question. And in every compare question, I think the most important part is the criteria. All right. Not necessarily, sometimes there will be a purpose. Okay, now for every time you have and you unpack something based on purpose, we are looking at whether or not there is a specific audience. So just be careful. I think if you are managing your time, definitely this is a 10 minutes. For question 1, it's 10 minutes. So if you're able to see the criteria in terms of content, I would recommend that you do that first and then come back if you have time. So don't overthink sometimes in compare and contrast. A lot of students spend unnecessary time when they look at compare contrast. Okay, now is of course utility. How useful is the source as evidenced about the response of soft drinks industries to health concern? Again, this requires a bit of unpacking. All right, it is a utility question. So when you have a utility question, the idea of cross-referencing is very, very important. The idea of the reliability statement. Oh, sometimes your teachers might call it the magic sentence, right? Hence, this is reliable, this is useful, this is unreliable, and hence not useful. So that is, of course, to justify your stand because you are using the cross-reference. I think don't misunderstand that, you know, oh, this is a magic sentence. It's not. You must understand why you are using this reliability statement. Okay, because you are cross-referencing it. That is why you need to make that justification. So a reliability statement, when you are using cross-reference, it is to justify why. Okay, now the other thing is, you remember that, but the next part is actually as evidence about the response of soft drinks industries to health concern. So what you are looking at, it is actually the response of soft drinks industry. All right, so be very careful when you are unpacking all these questions, even prior to you reading the source. So it does give you that focus, that frame when you are reading the source. Now, the next question, question 4, having read source E, are you surprised by source F? I think I have explained in many of the previous videos, you are looking at an element of surprise. And most of the time, the element of surprise will be opposite. Okay, something is not surprising because of cross-reference, because of purpose. It can be not surprising because of context. So again, I would say the possibilities are endless. Now, question 5. Introducing taxes on soft drinks and fatty food is the best way to make people eat healthily. So this itself is a factor, or I would say, well, this would be an agency perhaps, okay? But this is a factor. This is one of the many factors that will that will make people eat more healthily. So what are the other factors? So this is the part where you question yourself, how about other factors that will make people eat healthily? Is it just introducing of taxes? Can they do it themselves? So as you are reading the sources, put that in your mind. Okay, so let's now unpack the background information. Moving on. Now, should the governments be responsible for ensuring that people eat healthily? Now, the governments will be the only body, the only agency that can introduce taxes. Agree? Now, when you look back at question 5, so introducing taxes, if there were alternative reasons, correct? If there were alternative factors, sorry, what would they be and how successful, because we're talking about the best way, how successful would they be? So if the government introduced taxes, what is the best way to make people eat healthily? All right, now let's take a look. Very nicely, the 2019 background information is not as wordy as the previous years, so it does make reading a little bit more easier, I would say. Okay, now of course it talks specifically about the global crisis caused by unhealthy eating. We also talk about being overweight, which leads to serious conditions. Okay, and so these are the premise or the context. Okay, moving on, governments around the world have tried many methods, introducing taxes in a bid to make populations healthier. So it does recognize that the government is proactive in doing something. Whether or not the government have been successful is a different thing. Okay, but governments are responsible. Government needs to be proactive. Now let's take a look at source A. Now, source A is a why question. Remember the purpose question. Why do you think this poster was produced? And if you look very carefully, it is interesting where they are talking about what is happening in India. The government is trying to impose healthy eating habits with a 14.5% fat tax. It is to prevent you from choosing specifically food that is not very healthy. So here at the background, you can see fast food. Can't it trust you to eat healthily? So this is the question mark. Is it because as a government, they don't trust people to make the necessary decision? Okay, and I like at the bottom here, if you look at it, no nanny. So no nanny here, please be very careful. In the O-level, take note of specific things. Take note of, example, the description below the sources itself. No nanny refers to living in a government that is giving too much advice or make too many laws that sort of cripple a human life or a person's life. So take note about that. So now this is a poster by Students for Liberty group. So that means it is like a freedom kind of group. And Students of Liberty is a global network which campaigns to promote social freedom. So obviously, you can then sense that these people are unhappy that the government now wants to impose and decide on the eating habits of people living in Kerala, India. All right, and let's take a look at how we answer this. Now, why do you think this poster was specifically produced? It was done to criticize the government, specifically because they were imposing a tax. And it feels like the government was overbearing. It is the big brother syndrome and shouldn't interfere with people's life. And this was done in view because a lot of governments, from the background information, they were trying, right, specifically to make the population more healthier, okay, by introducing taxes on selected food. So this poster was definitely to convince the people that please remove the fat tax, go against the government initiative because it is definitely infringing, okay, infringe the rights of citizens to be able to make decision. Of course, if you want to question the reliability of the source, go ahead. Okay, it is questionable, yes, but at the same time, think about this. Okay, would having a law be successful? Having a law like this, if you were to go back to question 5. So always, every time after you finish one source, always go back to question 5 and think, would introducing this law or taxes the best way to make people eat healthily? And you can see that just based on source A itself may not be successful because people find it an infringement on the rights of making that informed decision. Now let's go to source B. Now source B, remember, it is how different are these two sources. Okay, so let's take a look and let's annotate source B first. Okay, so source B actually tells you some good things. It does tell you that in Britain, because we're talking that this is a British site, okay, there have been research done that if a sugar tax is being imposed by the government, it does help, okay, because especially treating obesity and diabetes actually costs a lot more expensive, and the government should tackle this problem by punishing consumers and soft drinks companies, okay. And even if, let's say, you don't do or you don't impose that tax, you just threaten to have that tax, it may bring a significant change because now consumers are able to change the formula in the drinks because there is a no calorie, no sugar substitute. And this will then help consumers to move away from high sugar drinks. So this is telling you that the sugar tax is quite useful. And in this British news site, they even quote that Mexico, which has the world's most obese countries, means more obese cases there. And when the sugar tax was introduced, the sale of tax drinks have dropped, and it dropped by 17% among the poorest groups. So it was a great success. So this is really a pro sugar tax, okay, a pro tax on certain certain food and drinks that will cost the health, detrimental health towards the people. Now let's take a look at source C. Source C does tell you that, yes, this is an Australian different newspaper. It's an Australian newspaper. Now the government panic leading to some world's worst practices of the nanny state. Nanny state is the government. Okay, it is an impractical food labeling rules and campaign for sugar tax. Okay, in fact, what it should be done is consumers should be free to choose and take the responsibility for themselves. A tax may not work because, okay, yes, they are talking about the same case study. They are talking about Mexico. A report claims that the volume of unhealthy soft drinks did fell. Okay, however, it did not consider other ways in which Mexicans might be getting their sugar. We are only taxing, or in Mexico, they are only talking about soft drinks. Mexicans can also get their fix on sugar, all right, by, for example, switching to cheaper brands or even switching to other alternatives. You know, they could probably drink bubble tea, or I don't know, they could do other things that is not really changing. So you see, even if you impose tax, if let's say the root cost is to get rid of people who are obese, right? Then a tax may not work. So you see, as you are reading all these sources, always go back to the narrative of question 5. I think that is very important. Okay, so let's take a look. Now, both sources are different in showing about the success. So it's quite obvious about the success of sugar tax, correct? It says source B does tell you that it does help, whereas this is in contrast to source C. Hence, both sources show the difference in perspective about the success of sugar tax. I think this is quite easy. And then how are they similar? They do highlight that the government's role and effort is very, very important. There is a tax. Actually, both of them have taxes, and both of them do show that the government is taking tough actions against the problem. Source B just highlights the success, whereas source C sorts of highlights that, it actually, while there is a possibility of a tax, it may not be successful. I think that is one of the things that we should just take note. Now, moving on. Okay, we are looking at utility. Okay, of course, in the exams, you're not supposed to be looking at sources in just one sources by itself. You are supposed to look at sources holistically. Okay, this is just for the sake of going through the question type. Okay, but as you are reading sources, and especially when it comes to sources like utility, sources like surprise, do take note that we are looking at cross-referencing. Okay. Now let's take a look at this. It does tell you how useful is it as response, correct? Now let's take a look. This is by the GM, General Manager of Coca-Cola in 2016. Okay, let's see later on whether the year does play a part. Does it make a big difference? Okay, they do agree with the government that obesity rates are very high. However, in Coca-Cola, they do not think that taxes is the solution. Okay, in fact, the general manager of Coke is saying that there is no reliable evidence from anywhere whether or not it has changed people's behavior. Sometimes they don't really care because, just because something is expensive does not make you not buy it. In fact, I think humans are like that. The more you sort of tell them not to do it, the more they will do it. Correct. Now, Coca-Cola also said that they are a consumer-led business and they have been listening to the responses of consumers and they have reformulated many of their drinks. Okay, and they say that through reformulating, through introducing smaller packs, through actually increasing advertisement or marketing to actually highlight there is a no sugar option to consumers, it is actually more effective in comparison to the sugar tax. Now, of course, when you look at it, this guy is the general manager of Coca-Cola. He is not going to agree on a tax. Come what may, right? So obviously, the not useful suddenly it sorts of blinks out and it sorts of literally just highlights to you that it may not be useful. It may not be 100% reliable. All right, but let's go back and answer the question first. This question is saying about utility. So it is useful. It does tell you about there is a positive, there is a proactive response, and you cannot blame. Coca-Cola does show that there is a positive response. Again, go back to the question. They are asking you about the responses of soft drink industries. They are concerned. They are proactive. The response here. So you must, in your answer, define this. What is their response? They are proactive. They feel that they are responsible. So these words are important even before you unpack, even before you cross-reference. Okay, and you will cross-reference. Okay, so you talk to, you sort of unpack the source D itself. So what is the cross-reference? The best cross-reference is actually to source B, where it does say that you can see in the second paragraph, just the threat of this may change and technology does have a substitute. Okay, so hence it is reliable, thus useful in validating that the response has been proactive. All right, write this well, and this would be a one solid paragraph. Now, why is it not useful? It is not useful because of the reliability, the irony, as well as the limitation of this source. It is the general manager of Coca-Cola who would want to portray that soft drink industries is trying to help. He is writing in a blog, and his intention is to show that soft drink industries, definitely they're taking a lot of effort. Okay, and of course they want to avoid that the tax on soft drinks, right? Because it is hoped that when you write this, when you write it in the open, when you make yourself look very vulnerable, people are still going to trust soft drinks industry. Okay, and you can even then cross-reference the background information, because there is this heightened alert that actually tells you that the governments are trying their very best to do something. Okay, so that is why Coca-Cola or any soft drinks company is trying their very hard to convince the governments that don't impose a sugar tax. Instead, let them change the diet, change the mindset, change the way soft drinks is being packaged, as well as soft drink is being consumed. Okay, so quite interesting, this particular source. Not so difficult, I would say, but it is to pick up the in-betweens, the nuances, the ironies, the limitations of the source. Okay, now let's take a look at the surprise question. Okay, after reading source E, will you be surprised specifically by source F? Now, let's take a look. Let's just jump a little bit. This is, of course, when we look at surprise, we are looking at this as the minister, and this is on 8 August 2017. The next source, it is 20th August 2017. So it feels that as though this is a response to whatever that was being mentioned in source E. Okay, so it says here about Singaporeans, they must be healthy, blah, 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 blah. And the second paragraph, it states that it is not the text. In fact, what it says here, each one of us must take responsibility, must make an effort to exercise, to diet, to change our diet, in fact, to start from young. That means education is key, so that we don't get diabetes. So here, the minister is saying that yes, this is the problem. They must go all out to fight diabetes, and definitely it is more of an individual kind of effort. Whereas in source F, let's take a look whether there are any surprised. Okay, and remember, this is, again, I repeat, this is definitely a very clear response to source E. And if you look very carefully, he says here that PME encourages people to eat brown rice and whole bread. However, it is true that healthier food is more expensive. So if you're going to ask the lower SES to eat healthier, then you need to make sure that healthy food is equally cheap. That is why people eat nonsense, because it's just cheap, and not only cheap, it is also delicious, correct? Now, eating out healthily is also more difficult for those with lower income, because they cannot afford to order all those, you know, vegan or acai bowls or whatever it is, okay? Hawker food is cheap, it's affordable, but let's be honest, it is very hard to find very healthy and less oily food. So what he is saying that it should be, in order to address this problem at its root cause, it is really about a mix of taxes and subsidies. And the taxes and subsidies can only come from the government, right? For non-essentials, a sugar tax can be imposed. So he does acknowledge a sugar tax is very, very important. For staples, healthier version. If diabetes is very crucial, then you have to make sure that the low incomes actually have a real choice. So very interestingly, he is saying that actually it is very hard to be healthy. So you can imagine if it's in Singapore with a lot of subsidy, with a lot of access to healthy food, is not able to do it. Imagine in other parts of the world. Now, this is a surprise question. Okay, let's take a look. I am surprised by source F because source E suggests that individuals can play a part. However, we are not sure whether or not source F, whether individuals highlighted in source F, whether they are able to eat healthier. Okay, source F also tells you that the government should be more responsible in comparison to the individual that was mentioned in source E. So that's why you are surprised. You're surprised that that, you know, people, even in the government, even the policymakers, they are not having the same narrative or same vocab. Okay, now moving on, you are not surprised with source F specifically. So this will be not surprised because of cross-reference. Okay, and it does say that when the NMP here, okay, Calvin actually said that, oh, it should be a mix of taxes and subsidies. You must find another source that shows the success of having tax. Okay, so I repeat, because source F actually shows that the way to go is to have a mix of taxes and subsidies to ensure that eating healthily for everyone is accessible and successful. Then you must find a source to show that tax on certain kind of food will actually be successful. So it's not surprising because in source B, it has work. And specifically, we're talking about the Mexico case study, right? So this implies that the government has an important role. And since source F agrees with source B agrees with source F, that it is the responsibility of the government, it is not surprising. Okay, it's not surprising that he feels this way. Okay, now let's take a look at the taking perspective. So always remember, unpack, unpack, unpack. As you are doing other sources in the back of your mind, always have that room or that analysis where you actually look at whether or not it is successful. Okay. So introducing taxes is the best way. Obviously, there are no's and there are yes. Okay, so we talk about source A and we said from the blue color, you can see that, introducing taxes is ineffective because people are not bothered by the initiative. People will continue to consume, and when they consume, their diet is not changed, and hence it is a failure. It is not the best way to make people eat healthily. For source B, whether or not people will eat healthily based on the tax, of course, what? All right. Remember the Mexico thing? Yeah, this shows very good success. In fact, it is so successful, especially in trying to change the habits of people who are very, very, very poor. Agree? Okay, so you agree. This suggests that people are consuming lesser soft drinks, and because there is such a tax, it is effective. People changed specifically their buying patterns. They are deterred, the word, to buy soft drinks because it's just more expensive. Okay, so yeah, having taxes does deter people, does stop people. This one is obviously a no, all right, unlike source B, hence source C will be the opposite, correct? Source D also, it doesn't really tell you because the Coca-Cola general manager says that actually there are other alternatives. Okay, it does not change consumers' health. Introducing such tests is effective because instead, when you reformulate, when you make that change through innovation and technology, from the beginning, I think this is very important. From the beginning, people already have a healthy choice. So you sort of even stop them from considering bad choices, bad eating habits, because if you are able to change your product to be more healthily, you already solve the issue. In fact, it is not about the tax itself, right? The tax doesn't do any justice. Of course, this is a point of view of the general manager. Now, moving on, he says that it is not tax, but it is the individual efforts, right? I hope you have seen that. Okay, and this says that it is definitely government because only the government can I guess impose that taxes and subsidies, because once you impose taxes and subsidies, the pattern, the consumption pattern, especially in Singapore, if things are a bit more expensive, people don't buy. Okay, this is the one. Government can make healthier choice, food cheaper, sugar more expensive, and attract to choose and eat food that is healthier. Now, bonus, remember, there are a few ways of doing bonus. Okay, in the previous video, I would have already mentioned, you question the reliability or sufficiency, whether there are limitations to the source, you look at contextual knowledge, and of course, you look at a balanced conclusion. If there's no balanced conclusion, then you come up with ways and methods for a resolution. A resolution, in basic terms, is what is the solution? Okay. So this is obviously, I would choose the questioning reliability because it's of source D, right? Obviously, he would not be supportive of a sugar tax. He is the general manager of Coca-Cola. It will be a considerable amount of money if there was a sugar tax. Imagine, it is billions and billions of Coca-Cola profit. Okay, and specifically whether or not this reformulated sugar drink is effective, it has not been proven. He is always saying that yes, there is this reformulation, but still you have alternatives of 100% sugar. Then if people are so used to the 100% sugar, why would they want to choose a reformulated one? So think very carefully. Whatever he's saying is also because he wants to just save his company. Okay, from the markers report, you can see that, there are a few attempts to question the reliability of source D, okay, based on the vested interest. I always like this word, vested interest of the general manager. Some also talk about source F, okay, the utility of source F and the very fact that there is a need for greater support from the government. Some candidates also shared specific examples from CK where they were talking about how there are alternatives towards that the soft drinks are doing. So hence maybe, it is the role of the companies that actually plays a greater role. And then of course, balanced conclusion, my favorite, this is always my favorite. Okay, they need to work together. There is no way that one problem can actually be solved. So when we do a balanced conclusion, we are looking at the impact and the extent of it. All right. And for questions like this, especially for social studies question, it's definitely not only for agency questions, I would say. Most of the time, it cannot just be individual, community, or government. It is a collective, collaborative, and that is where your success is. Okay, and here at the back here, it is the condensed version of the taking perspective question. Okay. All right, so I am going to stop here, and I hope that this very short video has helped you to sort of unpack and think through. It is not easy, but at the same time, it is not hard. Okay, I think 2019 paper was quite a good paper to sort of help the students to see things that is beyond the text and the source itself. Okay, so good luck and take care.